What's going on, everybody? It's Anthony, Russo, and Kaecey. We are here with a very special guest today with Truth Will Set You Free. I know it's mid-afternoon, so do us a huge favor. Start sharing this out there. If you're watching it later in the evening, also hit the share button. As we've talked about for a while, it is that time to start sharing your political opinions and not be in fear of the world around you. We have got Chad Prather running for Texas governor, comedian, talk show host, podcaster, etc. He's with Blaze TV. He is going to be with us, joining us, talking about his run for governor and also just talking about anything from local politics to life, etc. All these things. Kaecey, what do you think?
I'm super excited. I've followed him for a long time. I've watched a lot of his shows on Blaze. I'm looking forward to this conversation. It's going to be awesome.
Excellent. Again, guys, do us a huge favor. Hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the thumbs up button. Do whatever you can to create the algorithm. We still have technically 20 days where we are being banned on purpose from Facebook because, again, you can't share an FDA quote. All right, ladies and gents, let's get the party started. Chad Prather coming up right here on Truth Will Set You Free in 30 seconds. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Truth Will Set You Free. Special interview with candidate for Texas Governor Chad Prather. Keep hitting that share button. Keep hitting the like button. Keep hitting the hearts button. All of the above. It is time to get the party started. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got Kaecey with us. He's going to drop behind, and I'm going to bring Mr. Prather up. Ladies and gentlemen, with no further... Bye, Kaecey. I know. It's sad. It's terrible. All right, ladies and gents. Introducing to the stage, Mr. Chad Prather. What's going on, Chad? How you doing? Uh-oh. How do we lose your audio? Might have lost your audio. Try it again. Is he frozen? We had a whole conversation. We were good. Should have never taken him off the screen. Here, go ahead and drop out for me and drop right back in. It should fix it. Let's see if we can get his audio. It's so funny when we have the conversations and they're completely good until we bring them on camera, and then all of a sudden the audio is out. We never know why that happens. Let's see. Check 1, check 2. Why? We still don't hear you.
I hear you.
Try it again. No. Here, do me a quick favor. Go ahead and just leave the StreamYard and pop right back in, and it usually will work. All good. All right. Anyways, so after this, I'll do a little private rant to our audience. We'll do a rant on Ukraine and Biden and Russia and the stock market that's completely crashing. While we're at it, let's go ahead and look at some comments coming in as well. All right, let's see if Chad's audio is back. Check 1, check 2.
How about now?
Bam, we got it. All right.
I'm telling you, Satan himself lives in technology.
All right, let's get started. Kaecey, again, monitor the comments for us. If you see anything good or if you've got any questions, bring it on up. All right. All right, Chad, got it working. First off, good to see you, as I said, in your original studio, and obviously where all of your comedy started coming from. Let's start right there. First off, tell us about the fact that you're running for Texas governor, and then how you got started being this political comedian, pundit, etc.
Yeah, so I'm 49 years old, so I'm going to go ahead and date myself a little bit. I went to the University of Georgia, and while I was there, I took a very strong interest in the fact that the professors there on campus were not teaching the things that I believed, right? And so college professors have always gone beyond just teaching the subject. They also interject their philosophies, right? And I was hearing a lot of things. I was like, this really bothers me. So I realized that I was in a very progressive universe. And for 1991, we didn't even think of the word progressive. I just knew that this was not how I grew up. These weren't my values. So I started writing for the campus newspaper from a conservative, what I realize now was a conservative perspective. And I would write these articles every week, and it became kind of a popular thing. And then as I got older, I kind of held on to, that fight, right? That fight for people's individual liberties, and the fight for people to govern themselves. And I was actively involved, and people would have me come in and speak because I traveled all over the world, right? I would go out and do medical and mission work, and I would do humanitarian aid. So I spent a lot of time in third world countries. You'd come back from those third world countries, and people want you to come in and tell your stories. And so I was always in front of people talking, and I was always a values driven person. And part of my values is small government, limited government, and liberty. And so as I got older, I realized that I kind of had the gift of gab. And so I started doing radio, and I started doing some television stuff. And while I was, I'd be on my way to the studio to do this stuff, and I would just pop my camera phone up on the dashboard of the truck and start talking about whatever I was thinking about while I was sitting in traffic. And I posted on Facebook and YouTube, and people started watching this crazy stuff. So I always say, historically, I'm a real good time waster. And the thing went viral, right? It went viral. My mother called me on the phone. She said, "Chad, I'm concerned." I said, "What about?" She said, "Well, I heard you're sick." I said, "I'm not sick." She said, "Well, somebody at church said you're viral." and I said, "Well, they're talking about my Facebook and my Twitter." She said, "You're too old to be messing with your Twitter." So, I didn't have the nerve to tell her about my Snapchat. But anyway, one thing led to another, and I got into the world of podcasting, and wound up with a show on Blaze TV for the last 4 years. They gave me, it evolved from a podcast to doing a nightly television show, 4 nights a week at least. It's more like a television show now, but you can get it where podcasts are offered. We thought long and hard about a real creative name, and we came up with the Chad Prather Show.
That's good stuff right there.
It's good stuff. It's original.
Don't hide that talent in a bushel basket. That's a gift.
Don't hide that light, baby. But back in 2015, it got really, really intense for me because we were in those primary races between what ultimately became between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And I can remember pulling over on the side of the road in Texas, and I had a thought, and all these people were running in the primaries. And I said in a video, trying to figure out which candidate to choose is like trying to figure out which venereal disease you're most okay living with for the next 4 to 8 years. And at the time, people will crucify you for saying that. The people who love Donald Trump, they'll crucify. I didn't get Donald Trump in 2015. Like, I didn't understand that at all.
Right.
That was a phenomenon that I just couldn't grasp.
I actually, to tell you about Trump, I got him better in 2015 than I did right before the election. The only savings grace that made it easy for me was that he was going against Hillary. I still was in between on Donald. And I'm like, the reason I voted for him then was either he is going to actually fix the country or he is literally going to burn it down to the ground so we could restart.
Yeah,
he kind of did both in a weird way, but anyways, continue.
Well, when I went into the voting booth to vote in 2016, I tell people, I said there were 2 boxes. There was Hillary Clinton and not Hillary Clinton, and I voted for not Hillary Clinton. And so that's what, I went out and I was like, okay, hey, we voted for the Republican guy. I had no idea that we had just basically voted for people to lose their freaking minds and start drawing, with crayons in safe spaces and rock in the corner, sucking their thumbs, humming "Jesus Loved Me," and I was like, I had no idea that the world was about to go woke and just lose their minds in terms of this kind of stuff. But here we are, right? So it's been a journey for me. And so back in 2020, I was actually sitting at a dinner table with Donald Trump Jr., in South Dakota. It was July the 2nd. We were waiting on Donald Trump Sr. to come speak at Mount Rushmore the following night for the 4th of July celebration, which was going to be on July 3rd at Mount Rushmore. And my phone went off, news notifications saying that Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, which is where I live, was handing out more mandates, determining that more businesses were non-essential, shutting them down, and was furthering the mask mandates in the pandemic. And so I said, surely somebody's going to stand up to this guy's overreach, because what was happening on the federal level was now happening in Texas. And being, again, a small government liberty guy, I said, surely somebody's going to speak out and stand up against this guy. And somebody sitting next to me said, why don't you do it? And I thought about it for a second. I always tell people that I don't know if it was because I was drinking wine that night or because I was sitting with a Trump, but I jumped on Twitter and I tweeted at 7:20 p.m. on July 2nd, 2020, that I was going to run for governor in 2022. And I went to bed, woke up, did the thing with the Trump family. We were guests of Eric Trump the following day. And man, I just wasn't really paying attention to this huge online groundswell of people who were saying, yes, do this, do this, do this. And so I thought about it and I said, yeah, I think that I, as the everyday person who has a platform and a voice, should actually pursue this. And I had no idea what I was bargaining for, Anthony. I had no idea. It was like taking a sip from a fire hydrant. I have learned so much in the last 19 months. It's incredible. But I made myself, as I have my entire life, I've made myself a student of what I was pursuing.
Right.
And so I'm pretty proud of what we've accomplished. We're 4 full days away from the election primary day, which is Tuesday, March 1st. It's been an adventure, and we're obviously, as we've talked about, we can talk about it some more. I'm knee deep in even more adventure and challenges right now as we get close to election day.
Yeah, we'll get into the censorship pretty quick. And honestly, Kelly and I went to see you speak, and both her and I we know how funny you are. We've seen your show, we've seen your content. Seeing how you've educated yourself on federal politics all the way down to state politics, the state of Texas, etc. That was where I was like, holy shit. Like it goes above. This is for anybody that several months ago said that this was just some random tweet and you're not serious. You have learned, you have surpassed the knowledge of most politicians at this point, because they stopped caring about 7 years into their office, and a lot of them are at 48, as we know. So kudos to that, because we both were like, did you know he was that smart? Did we know that? So it was great to see you in Longview. And the question before we get into censorship. So with Governor Abbott, I think it's fascinating. That was the other thing that, as I've started to watch you and Alan West speak, as a Texan, I had a little bit of trouble seeing why Governor Abbott was not the right choice. Because to me, I agree with you. The mandates were overreach, but it was happening all over the country. I'm like, he still was better than most states. Granted, Texas should be the best state. Let's be very clear. But then you started opening my eyes to a lot of the issues with Abbott. So before we get into censorship, what are some of the key speaking points on why, although we are running on the Republican ticket and we're all going against essentially the Democrats, why not Abbott?
Yeah, that's a good question, Anthony. I voted for the guy twice. Let me be clear. So I'm not one of these, hey, let's get this guy out. There were some issues that I had, but they weren't that big of a deal until the shutdown started happening. And people say, and it is real easy to look back and go, well, we came through it. He lifted the mandates. But the problem is he played arsonist and firefighter through that process. He lit the fire, put it out, then patted himself on the back for putting it out faster than others put theirs out. That was not good enough for me. So once I jumped in, I started looking at some things, and it was I started exploring those sneaking suspicions. What was bothering me about this governor? And I realized some things, and it's evolved. And so I'll give you my summary. We always say, don't California my Texas, right? And that's a great little saying, and it sounds good. And we say, oh, we're Texas, we're the best. Everything's bigger in Texas. We got a humble arrogance. We walk a little bit taller, a little bit prouder. Our heads are up, our chests are out. But I realized we don't lead the state. We don't lead the country in anything. The only thing we're number one in of a significant value is we're number one in much metropolitan areas in how big our property taxes are. That's not a good thing. So we rank 38th in the nation in spending. We should be number one, right? But in terms of exorbitant spending, we're way up there. We are in the high 30s, low 40s for education, healthcare opportunities, so many other things. But this governor in 7 years, and he's been in office almost 30 years. So he is the epitome of a career politician. These are getting up there close to Joe Biden numbers, right? We keep putting guys like Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden back in office under the guise of they can win. Well, we know they can win. Problem is, why do we keep letting them win? 30 years in Austin is a long time. And in that period of time, he's increased spending in the state by $48 billion. And so That's a 19% increase in spending. And where that becomes significant is we've only grown in population by 5.4%. So the spending is expanded far beyond what our population can sustain. So if we continue with this pattern, and there's no indicator to say we're not going to, we've got about half a dozen years, about 5 or 6 years before we really look like California. Yeah. We're in a problem. So we know our property taxes, metropolitan area #1, overall state, we're ranked 6th in the nation. The border crisis continues to go on. We know the federal government is not coming to our aid. They're not going to help us out in any way, shape, or form. And when they do, it comes with strings attached, which is unfortunate. We know what happened last February with the energy grid. We were 4.5 minutes away from being in the dark ages, 4.5 minutes away from looking like North Korea. People say, you poor Texans couldn't handle some cold outside. I say, it wasn't that it was cold outside, it was cold inside, and 200 people died. We shouldn't have had that. And so on and on the list goes. But the biggest thing, Anthony, is not that he spent $295 million on contact tracing of taxpayer monies, which that's bad. Not that he didn't care about the GOP priorities in this last 87th legislative session in June. But the fact that he's violated our constitutional rights about 16 times in the last 18 months. How many times does somebody have to violate your rules? Let's say you hired a security team to watch your property and you said, hey, don't mess with my kids, don't touch my wife, and don't come into my bedroom unless it's emergency. If they did that one time, you'd fire them and get another team.
Right.
So here's a guy who's done it at least 16 times, and he's not doing anything about the border. I don't care what he said on Tucker Carlson, he's not. And so I said, it's time to get government out of our life. We woke up on September 1st to 666 new laws in our life. Interesting number, but I didn't go to bed. I didn't go to bed on August 31st wanting 600 some odd new laws in my life, but we're continually legislating ourselves to death. Government's gotten out of control. We've got what I call the blueberries in the chili, which is Dallas and Fort Worth and El Paso and San Antonio and Houston and Austin. And somebody said to me from a newspaper recently, they said, if you made it to Austin, do you think you could handle it since Austin's not like the rest of Texas? I said, well, that's very telling. I said, we should make Austin like the rest of Texas.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if it'll happen, but.
So the bottom line is we know that Texas is not the Texas that most Texans think it is anymore. Under Rick Perry, we were ranked 19th in spending, and now we're 38th, 40th under Greg Abbott. So we've got to change this. Our state agencies have expanded and grown so beyond bloat that we don't know what to do with them. We've got all these tyrannies. I'm going to say this, I'm going to hush. But we've got medical tyranny, we got corporate tyranny, bureaucratic tyranny, educational tyranny, judicial tyranny, media tyranny, big tech tyranny. It's a lot of tyrannies. And all of these things are these boots are on our neck, and we've got to do something about it.
Agreed. And we're going to have Kaecey come up with a quick question before we go on. But yeah, you can come up, Kaecey. But the one other thing, I've listened to you and Alan West, and somebody asked in the comments, I've been trying to arrange the same thing with Alan as well. To have an interview just like this. I got to see both of you guys speak, and both of you really, from an educational perspective, somebody that follows politics, you guys really did educate me so much on the differences and that we think Texas is so great, but it is not perfect. And before Kaecey asked the question, the big issue that I've been seeing, obviously, from my end, looking at land purchases, is the Chinese buying of land in the state of Texas. How is that a governor's role where they can monitor that or essentially make that not happen? Because it seems like it's a dangerous territory that we're walking in, especially seeing what's happening in Ukraine and what could happen in China.
Well, we see what happened when Joe Biden pulled the troops out of Afghanistan. China immediately with their Belt Road, they immediately started inroads into Afghanistan because they want the lithium that's in the soil. China is out of arable land. They don't have any farmland left in China. That's why they own so much of Africa. That's why we saw the outbreak of COVID in Ethiopia, because they do a lot in Ethiopia, a lot in Italy as well. They've started to buy land here in America as well, and a lot of it in Texas. So we've got to make doing business with foreign entities that are our stated enemies. We got to make that illegal. All right. Yeah. You can't do that. We're not going to do business with the CCP. Now, this governor, Greg Abbott, he actually sent a congratulatory letter to the CCP, congratulating them for 70 years of rule in China. Now they are a living, breathing human rights violation when you consider what they do with the Uyghur slaves and so on. But he also bragged about doing a $10.8 billion trade deal with China, between China and Texas. I don't like that at all. You say, well, it's money. Well, money is not just money. Okay. It comes with other things. And so somebody said to me recently, said, oh, as governor, you're just going to tell people what they can do with their land. It's like, it's not about being the governor telling you. It's just, there's some things you can and cannot do with your land.
Right.
I can't go put a cemetery on my land. I can't just sell my land to ISIS for them to put a training camp out there.
Right.
There's things that are dangerous. And just like right now in Bandera, Texas, people are wanting to put a 2,000 acre solar farm out there. Well, it's going to ruin the town of Bandera, which is the cowboy capital of the world, northwest of San Antonio. And you know, they're going to walk away and leave it, and it's money for them. But hey, what about your neighbors? So we've got to think about things like that, and certainly doing business with nefarious actors like China, we've got to make it legal.
Yeah, especially, I mean, we've got they have a wind farm that got set up, the windmills.
Outside of Texas, right by the Air Force Base.
And I mean, anybody with a good telescope, that's just right in. I mean, it makes zero sense that wasn't a stop put to by the one person that could make it stop, which is the governor. Right. Kaecey, what question do you got for Chad before we get into censorship?
Yeah, one of my questions was actually a little bit on talking about the election. And I know it's really difficult to unseat an incumbent, like to be able to take over. But my question is, who do you think is your biggest challenger? And what do you think the best thing is that they bring to the table?
So, you know, it's funny. And you're right, Kaecey. It is statistically impossible, especially in a state like Texas, to unseat an incumbent governor, especially one that's got big tech and the mainstream media actually working for them. You know, they try to say, oh, he's this big bad guy. But people in Texas are going, hell yeah, that's our guy. So by quote bashing him, they're helping him. Does that make sense? So I was the first person in the race. Okay. I was the first person in, and then Don Huffines jumped in May of 21. And then Alan West jumped in November of 21. And so since November of last year, the three of us have done at least 17 candidate forums together across the state. There weren't debates because we're coming from the same perspective and we've got the same idea, and that is anyone but Abbott. As long as it's a conservative person, somebody's going to put Texas back on track. Obviously, if Greg Abbott wins the primary against O'Rourke, we're going to back Abbott. Okay. But I still insist that he is just the flip side of the same big government coin. So, you know, I'll tell you about both of those guys. You know, Don Huffines comes from a big business background. Alan West comes from a big military background. Obviously, he was a lieutenant colonel. He's been in politics his whole life. People say, oh, but not politics, he was military. You don't become a lieutenant colonel without being engaged in politics.
It's a true story.
And so then he held office as a congressman in Florida. And Alan West has been a friend of mine for a long time, a lot of years. I admire the man, love the man, appreciate him. And people say, well, he's got this fault and that fault. Yeah, you know what? Everybody's got their faults, but I love the man. Don Huffines, I didn't know that long. I knew him before he got in the race, but he's become a friend. And I don't know Don that well, but I'll tell you what, I consider him a very gracious man. And there's a lot of misinformation out there on the internet about him. They think he's a car salesman in Dallas. He's not. His brother actually owns the dealerships over there. He's a building developer. And so those guys, what they bring to the table is a ton of political experience. Don, of course, was a one-term senator in Texas, and he's been in the legislative process here in Texas. That's an advantage. Alan was the chairman of the GOP here in Texas. That's an advantage in that regard. These guys know the ins and outs. I'm the dark horse. I'm the barbarian at the gate. I'm the non-politician. I'm the guy who's talked about politics, made fun of politics, and now he's actively involved in it. Some people see that as a pro. Some people see that as a con. Me, I personally push it this way. I say, look, I don't have any axes to grind. I don't have any grudges. There's no revenge. I'm after Abbott and getting government out of your life and letting the priorities of the people of Texas rule and reign. Let that be how we decide everything. But I think either one of those gentlemen would make a good governor in the state of Texas. We'll talk about the censorship in a little while, but I'll just allude to this. You know, Don Huffines called me on the phone 2 nights ago. He was somewhere and I was somewhere in Texas. And he such a good guy. He said, I heard that you got banned on Facebook. If you need to get a message out, use my platform. Now, that's unheard of in politics in the 21st century, but that should tell you the gentleman's race we've run.
Yeah.
We come from different perspectives. We don't agree on everything. You wouldn't expect us to. But at the end of the day, man, and I like to believe I sort of set the tone for that early on, because I said I'm not going to point fingers, mudsling, or name call, because I'm not running against these gentlemen. I'm running alongside them.
Right.
I'm happy the way we ran this thing for the last year.
No, that's awesome. Kaecey, did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Love the answer. That's very nice. It's a gives a whole different dynamic to politics, and I think that's a refreshing change that we need to bring within this arena in general.
He's not the best color man in the business for nothing, Monty.
There you go.
Awesome. All right, Chad. So for those of you that don't know, Chad is not on Facebook right now. We have all had our battles with social media. He's been in and out of jail. We were doing really well for a while. Once we were able to monetize, we were doing great. Then all of a sudden you say a couple things, they take you off. The censorship has reached all new levels, and still people from the left don't understand that it is only one direction. But this actually is possibly a slightly different story. So Chad, kind of explain what's going on with your social media and your thoughts on it.
Well, I'll tell you this. I've been on social media for a long time. Back in 2007, 2008, I used to sit there and stare at my phone, and my wife at the time, she'd say, "You're always looking at that phone." And I was like, yeah, well, there's a way to make a living on this social media thing. And so we began to do that. I found the way to do that. And I always had a good relationship with social media, even though I've been abrasive in my humor and a little bit controversial at times. But I never had a Facebook ban. I never even had a single restriction on Facebook until I was a candidate for governor in Texas. So on Monday morning, and normally I have a business rep with Facebook that I can email, and she normally responds right back. They look at it, review it with real eyeballs, and they're like, yep, we got it wrong. They lift the restriction, right? So this time on Monday morning, 7 a.m., I look at my phone. I'm in Facebook jail. It's a 7-day suspension, which is very odd. It's odd because the last suspension I got was a 30-day. Now, normally they go higher. They don't go lower.
Right.
So they get a 24-hour, a 3-day, a 7-day, a 30-day, and then they'll usually keep you at a 30-day deal. This, they gave me a 7-day. Well, the significance of that is we were 8 days away from election day. So the last 30-day suspension I got, they lifted after 3 days because they reviewed it and said, yeah, we got this wrong. So they gave me a 7-day suspension. So she emailed me back and she said, we'll take a look at this, but I'm going to loop in my colleagues to take a look at that are better, that can help you with your governor campaign. Now, I never said anything about my governor campaign. I just want to know, I wanted you to review the restriction, because the restriction, there was no excuse. There was no reason for the restriction. They just said, hey, you're in a 7-day jail. And they posted some pablum comment that I responded to somebody. And I'll tell you what I said. I made the comment because somebody was coming at me and they said, you look at all the media documents. You guys are a bunch of, or look at all the documentation. Y'all are insurrectionists for what happened in the Capitol and all this. And I said, well, you need to go pull the FBI documents that said that no insurrection happened. And
not a single charge.
That's what the ban was for, by saying, hey, go look at the actual FBI documents.
Wow.
And by using the word insurrection, probably.
Probably.
It's something that normally would be cleared right up. Now, that being said, the guy she referred me to, he emailed me and he said, I'm going to take a look at this and we're going to circle back. Sounds a lot like Jen Psaki to me, right? We're going to circle back. So I emailed him again yesterday. Yesterday was Wednesday. And so that was Monday, Tuesday. Emailed him yesterday, Wednesday. Still had not heard anything back. He's still not circling back. And I still haven't gotten a response. And today, of course, is Thursday when we're taping this. So I haven't heard anything. We are going to file a petition legally to get me reinstated, because we need to do that, because that's the first step. If we're going to do any other legal recourse later on, is we have to at least say that we took the steps to try to get reinstated. And the thing will probably be up in 3 days, but here's the deal. My major stump for campaigning is Facebook, because that's where I have millions of followers and a lot of reach there. And so for them to take me down 8 days before election day, to me, is election interference, especially when you've already admitted, I'm in a campaign here, and you have not given me a legitimate reason or a review as to why I'm being censored. So you can get a little bit of PR out of that for a day or two, and after that, it starts to become problematic.
Right.
And here's the issue that I have. I remind everybody that Greg Abbott in 2021, February 21, he passed a law based on common carriage, which has been around since the 19th century in America regarding telephones and telegraphs. And he applied that to the censorship of conservatives, specifically with social media in the state of Texas. But Greg Abbott's also the number 2 subsidizer of Facebook in the nation. Texas gives Facebook about $165 million a year in order to do business in Texas. They give them tax subsidies. So the similarities and the coincidences are very awkward at this point.
I would say so.
That one of your opponents is being silenced. Now, it's interesting that Don Huffines has reached out regarding my ban and said, hey, let me help you. Greg Abbott, who's just as much my opponent as Don Huffines, has not said a word about this. It has not said a word about this. And I know for a fact, because I've talked to the upper echelons of government in Texas in the last 2 days, I know he knows about this, but he's strangely silent. So there's other evidence of election interference. I've already gotten emails today about certain poll watchers that are mine that are getting kicked out of polling places because of some technicalities that nobody's ever heard of. The poll workers are emailing me about this, or not the poll workers, but people who are, can see what's happening. And the various other things are going on that are very nefarious on the state level. It's very interesting to watch.
Right when I heard somebody message me, I think yesterday, like, did you know, because they knew we were doing the show with you, and like, did you know that Chad got pulled off of Facebook? And I was like, no, get out of here. And then I'm not gonna lie, my immediate thought was, because I remember when you spoke, you talked about Abbott having the ties to Facebook and a little bit of that, and I was like, this is it's a little hairy. My initial thought was somebody with that kind of power. And ultimately, it's not just about you, Chad. It's also about the fact that as a group, as a collective, with the Huffines, the West, and you, the goal, I believe, is to make sure there's a runoff election, and then to get to the people that really, really, really know their Texas politics. You're going to probably have half the amount of votes show up for the runoff election, and whether it's you, whether it's West or Huffines, just somebody to make sure that the GOP has somebody representing Texas. So the fact that they know that you're not just a voice for Chad Prather, you're a voice for the anyone but Abbott kind of movement on that side.
Sure,
so that's why it was so important to crippling you is much more important than hurting Allen or Huffines in that sense. So I immediately thought that same thing. Something is to it.
Yeah. No, this has national security implications. This is election interference. It's election meddling. There's a reason why in Texas they dropped the election meddling from being a felony to a misdemeanor. I don't know if people realize that or not. It needs to be a felony. It could be the people who are in charge, the administration in charge, are the ones who are actually meddling. And so they took the opportunity to reduce it to a misdemeanor. So this is a bad situation. I mean, this really should go all the way up to Congress, quite honestly. This could be a watershed situation of clear tampering with an election on the part of big tech. And we're not going to back away from it. This is a real deal. And people say, oh, well, and by the way, Anthony, to anyone listening, there are no reliable polls in Texas for this primary. Any poll that you see out there was conducted, paid for, and promoted by the candidate that's putting it out. So there's no reliable polls. Plus, it's very difficult to poll my supporters because many of them have not ever voted in a primary. Some of them haven't voted in 30 years. And I know that. I mean, I'm getting the messages. We're voting for the first time in our lives, some of them say. And these are people who have gotten actively involved. They're crawling out from under the rocks, man, because they love freedom and they want a non-politician. They like my barbarian, my politically incorrect style.
Right.
So, and I'll shoot straight with you, right? I'll shoot straight with you. If I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know.
Right.
But that's where we are, man. You don't know. But I've had people who said, oh, well, you're only polling in the single digits. Well, maybe that's true. But how many digits do you have to poll in before your vote counts? Before meddling in elections matters, before free and fair elections need to be defended. I don't care if you're polling at 1%. It still matters. especially in the conversation regarding election integrity these days. So we'll see what happens on this deal. We're in the fight right now. I got to get to Tuesday. And I want to say, folks out there who have helped share our message, thank you. I'm still on Twitter, still on Instagram. Right now, the Instagram story is one of the best places to get updated information every night, because I'm not doing the Chad Prather show. We're not taping right now because we won't be back until Wednesday because we're getting through this election.
Might be a good time to hop back on it real quick just to be able to.
Well, what I'm doing is I'm going live. I'm going live on my YouTube channel, Chad Prather's YouTube channel, every night at 6:00 Central. From now on until then, we've got a couple thousand people that'll watch that live, and I get pretty fired up. It's pretty passionate about all of this stuff, and which doesn't take much. I'm a pretty passionate guy, but we kind of give people some updates on that. But I'm humbled. I want to, thankful for Don and his support in that. His gesture was kind. I did an event the other night in Royce City, and a lady sitting at the front table, she said, "What if we all pulled our phones out and went live at the same time, and you just put out a 2-minute message?" And I was like, that is humbling. That is very humbling.
Clever idea
to do that. And Glenn Beck, he had me on his show Thursday, was a week ago. So last Thursday morning, he had me on. He gave me 17 minutes, which is radio gold if you can get minutes on the Glenn Beck program. And that's on my Twitter. It's on various places, my YouTube. And that was it's actually pinned at the top of my Twitter, Watch Chad. And that was a powerful, to me, a powerful interview. Because we exposed a lot of things that need to happen. And it was like God just kind of settled on the room there and gave me a lot of liberty to say the things that I said.
Yeah. And I'm going to wrap up censorship real quick, and we'll get into some other stuff just about life and creating change.
Sure.
But I got 2 questions. First off, did you notice, and this is where our and again, this is all about big tech. And big tech to me, big pharma, big tech, those 2 things are the biggest bane of the existence of the United States of America, personal opinion. Did you notice after the election in January, because you have a huge following, did you notice your engagement levels drop drastically after January of 2021?
Well, I'll tell you, it was worse in 2017.
Really?
So for me, people kept saying, "Oh, you made money because Trump got elected." I would have made a lot more money if Hillary had gotten elected, because you wouldn't have the Cambridge Analytica, you wouldn't have the Russian collusion, you wouldn't have the meddling, the Facebook ads, all of that stuff that went down. Things would have continued as normal. They wouldn't have felt the need to censor it. But so I have 2 blog pages, Anthony. One is chadprather.com and one is politicalcowboy.com. They both have different content on there, but we update them all day throughout the day. Politicalcowboy.com, prior to Trump getting elected, was getting about 750,000 unique visitors a day. That's a lot.
Yeah.
On January 27th, 2016, January 27th, just a week after the inauguration, that engagement went from 750,000 unique visitors a day down to 3,000 a day. So the main bit of traffic was being driven through my Facebook pages. That ended.
Wow.
I could post something up there. Boom. It ended.
And you said that was 2017? That was 2017?
That was 2017. Yeah, I think it's 16 a minute ago. But it was January 27th of 2017. You could see the graph just go whoop, just like that. It was done. It was done. I mean, we went from, as you alluded to earlier, once you got monetized, you can make a little money, right? You could drive some traffic here and there. You can make some money. That business ended, brother. It was done.
Yep.
Now we're seeing quicker restrictions. Like I said, I've never been in Facebook jail. Somebody said, "Man, do you really want to take Facebook to court? They're going to talk about all your restrictions." I'm like, I wear that like a badge of honor, man. I've been telling the truth, and they want to restrict me. But I went on Instagram and I did a screen recording of all my restrictions. I think I've only ever had like 8 or 10 total in 10 years of using Facebook for a living. So anyway.
My 2 this year. One was when I used the FDA quote about now we're just going to have to try it out on our children. They didn't like that one. I literally was just sharing the exact quote. And then, so that was my first time ever getting a warning. I'm incredibly careful about my words. And then the next one was a month later. And again, without any background of issues, nothing at all, they banned certain things. So after the second one, which was me saying that Omicron just so happens to be looking a lot like the common cold, it's structured the same way, etc. And that one ended up being the one that demonetized, took everything down. 2 warnings in my whole Facebook existence took it down. And we did January of 2021. We went from 600,000 engagements all the way down to 100,000, 80,000, and had to work our way back up. We did. Those 2 things happened, back down. So it's a fun ride. And Kaecey, before you ask the one question coming from the crowd, do you remember what happened to Tulsi Gabbard in 2020? She obviously incredibly intelligent, killed it on the first debate stage. Everybody and their mother was Googling her, and everybody knows how the presidential election works. You have to get a bunch of unique donations of $5 or more, right? And you have to have a certain amount of, is it web searches, or it's something kind of arbitrary how to get into the next one. And randomly Google, just her page crashed. Who knows why? She is not a typical Democrat. We're clearly seeing that now. And it's amazing what big tech can truly do. And honestly, I don't think anything ever came from that. I know she tried suing, but I think that it kind of went nowhere.
No, I was on an airplane with Tulsi. We sat next to each other on an airplane. And we talked about that very thing.
Interesting.
And she just shook her head. Because it's a reality, but you know, they've got you by the short hairs, you know. And I tell people, I said, imagine it's 1890 and they're going to run the telegraph lines across America, but they're not going to come to your town because they said, oh, you know, there's a bunch of religious zealots in that town. We're not going to give them telegraph, or, you know, the telephone lines are running through. It's 1930 or whatever. And they're like, nah, this neighborhood is not going to get telephone because their political views are a little weird. We would never apply that to that. But, you know, that's where common carriage laws came from. But now we're going to do it with social media, and we're just going to say, that's fine. Let it go.
And we're paying for it right now, because in all honesty, Tulsi is somebody that if she would have gotten more traction, I don't think she would have won the Democratic nomination, but she would have been in line for vice president. And I think that would have been a game changer, because you would have had a moderate politician in there. And right now we know what's happening with Joe Biden. That's a whole cluster F. But right now, nobody wants to pull the plug on Joe because Kamala is right there. Even the left is like, that was a bad idea. But if we had Tulsi in there, we'd at least have some kind of confidence in our federal government to go, all right, Joe, time to step down.
I agree.
It's dangerous. Kaecey, what's the question up there?
Yeah, so one of the questions, I lost track of it in the comments, but
I got it.
And you got it in there. But it's about what would be your plan? I know Abbott has done some things around the border and the immigrants that are coming into Texas. What would be your idea or plan into tackling that?
So, you know, my big argument is that Greg Abbott has only dealt and addressed the border issue as a campaign issue. So a while back, a couple of months ago, I posted 7 headlines of things Greg Abbott said he was going to do about the border. And it sounded great. The only problem was they were headlines from 2014. So he's saying the same thing again. When he was on Tucker a couple of weeks ago saying they were building the wall, they're not building the wall. They're on private property, erecting 1.3 miles of border panels. That's it. It was a photo op, okay? So what's happening on the border is a nightmare. So the first thing we've got to do is we got to disincentivize the reason illegals are coming to the border. They're coming to the Texas border, by the way. When you turn on the news, it's always a Texas border. It's not New Mexico, Arizona, or California. It's Texas. We got to realize that they're coming here for healthcare, education, welfare, and housing. We're subsidizing that with your taxpayer dollars. We got to disincentivize that. But we've got to deport and we've got to defend. We definitely have to deter and detain. We have to detect, but we've got to deport and we've got to defend. Now, self-deportation is a great thing. We should add about 12 to 14% transaction fees at Texas banks, so that when illegals try to transact money or transact business at a Texas bank, that 12 to 14% charge goes back into Texas. They'll self-deport on that. Oklahoma actually does that now with a 1% charge, and they put about $15 million in their bank every year, in Oklahoma every year. We could do billions in that regard. We're way bigger than Oklahoma, and we would put a much more exorbitant charge on there. But we've got to stop with the stash houses. Title 8. Code 1324 says that you can't aid, hide, or transport illegals. That's exactly what we're doing. In McAllen, they're flying out of the airport by the thousands every day. Out of Del Rio, they're being bussed out into the interior of the country. Catholic charities and other 501c3s and NGOs are helping them do that. We've got to revoke the licenses of those NGOs who are violating that Title VIII code. Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution goes hand in hand with Article 4, Section 7 of the Texas Constitution that says that if the federal government's not going to come to our aid in an event of an invasion, and this is an invasion, then what we've got to do is the governor becomes the commander-in-chief of the State Guard and the state of Texas, and now can enact the State Guard, and currently needs to be using the Texas National Guard, as well as the militias, as well as the Department of Public Safety, their human and material resources, which rival the military in some cases, but also civilians and veterans. We need to be deputizing them. And the point I'm making is, yes, we do need a physical barrier where we can get it. But Texas, out of 1,254 miles, there's only really about 300 miles of that actually need a border wall.
Right.
So we need a human wall. People who stand there and say, nope, we're not going to violate Title VIII. We're not going to do that. We're not letting you into the country. We're not going to do that. You need to turn around. You need to go and you need to come in the front door, not in the back door. You know, they're firing across the river at us every single day. Our men and women do not have the authority to fire back. Our founding fathers would be turning around in their grave. I mean, they'd be rolling over this. And this is an invasion. And on day one of my administration, we would declare it an invasion. We would also declare the cartels as narco-terrorists, and we would be able to do a lot more against them in regards to this. But listen, the cartels, no one is coming across that river that's not being aided by the cartels. They're making billions of dollars a year. In some places, $35 million a day or week. There was enough fentanyl brought across our border in the last year that was enough to kill 2.8 billion people. That's a third of the global population. So this is a bioweapon from China, another one, a bioweapon from China that is being brought into our country through the cartels as a weapon of mass destruction. So we've got to put a stop to this, not to mention the human trafficking, the organ harvesting, the child trafficking, the sex trafficking, stop all of these things. But we're going to have to declare Texas sovereignty, which is the 10th Amendment. No state has ever truly engaged the 10th Amendment in our history, because we know that the federal government not only is not coming to our aid, they've actually got a target on our back. They want us to become like California, because then we're weakless. We're weak, we're helpless, we're impotent. And you know, California is useless at this point. Good people in California, but their bureaucracy has destroyed the state. It's fall off into the Pacific Ocean because it's gone. It's done. It's dead. The land of Reagan is no more. And I don't want that to be the land of Sam Houston to go the same way. Yeah. So there's a number of things practically we could do, but it's going to take a governor with some balls to do it, quite honestly.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, you and I talked a little bit about background with Kelly, you know, with the ranches and the farms and all this stuff close to the border. Not even right on the border, hour up, they're seeing things that it's a mass influx of people coming in to the point where they are getting damage to their property. They're risking their livestock, their horses, etc. every day, when prior it was once a month at worst. And now you're seeing it every day, if not twice a day. You're having shootouts on properties. And this is not even just on the border anymore. It's further north. And right. Trump even said the other night, he's like, we were almost done with the wall. So fact is, the wall is almost done, but there is these areas that should be patrolled by human beings, and we're just letting it slip through. And that's partially a Biden issue and also partially an Abbott issue to really take control and not just do photo ops.
Well, and one of the things that Alan West and I have both proposed is we need to have a border zone between the Rio Grande and Highway 90 to the north. That needs to be completely controlled. Break that into 5 different divisions, 5 segments, which is basically what it is now. But we need drone detection. We also need motion detection. There's a lot of things that we could do. I mean, people have no idea, honestly. You get down into Texas, man, and it's a barren wasteland.
Yeah.
So you talk about humanitarian crisis. I know ranchers who walk out, you know, they go out to hunt or whatever. They're going through their land. They got, 30,000 acres, and they find human remains that have been there for like 3 years. That people, they were just left behind. The coyotes and the drug mules and all of these people, they just, if they're weak, they just leave them behind. So we've got to shut this thing down. If it were up to me, I'm going to ding here. I'm going to let my battery on my truck crank up and die.
You're good.
It's the sound of money. I think in a Biden economy, this thing burns gas even when it's off.
Truth, especially now. Welcome to the Ukraine situation.
But no, people don't understand. I mean, we've got to stop turning ideologies into policies. And again, the woke mom, Kamala Harris, she hasn't been down on the border. She hasn't seen what's going on. My friend Joe Frank Martinez, he's the sheriff in Del Rio, Valverde County. When you saw all those Haitians under International Bridge, all of them are coming through. They arrested almost 100 different nationalities at the Del Rio border section. That's 121 miles of border section with Mexico. There's not that many. There's not 100 countries below us. They're coming from all over the world. There was about 145 nationalities at the southern border completely and totally. But Joe Frank is a Democrat. He's a Democrat, and he'll tell you he's a Democrat. He's been in that office as sheriff for a long time. But he'll tell you, he said, the last administration, he said, I didn't like that guy, but he had it under control. He said, this guy I voted for, and it's a mess. And it is, which is why they made them put the remain in place policies under Trump back in place in this Biden administration.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Kaecey, you good?
Yes, sir. Love it.
Excellent.
Love it.
All right. Next question. We only have a certain amount of time left, and I want to talk about just general stuff in terms of creating change. And maybe if we've got a minute or two, we'll wrap up with what's going on in Ukraine, because that matters to kind of everybody. But I want to know, we talked a little bit in the beginning. We talked about comedy. We talked about common sense and comedy, mixing the two, and also creating change on a interpersonal level. What is your philosophy on how we can change the world as individuals?
For the last 25 years, I started developing this philosophy of how can the normal, average, everyday person change not only the world but their world. I'm a person of faith. I love the Bible. I'm fluent in Koine Greek. It's not a spoken language; it's a written language. I taught seminary master's level Greek for the New Testament for 3 years on a master's level university setting. And I love the language, right? And I would read the book of Acts and how these normal, everyday, rough as a cob fishermen changed the world the way they did. Yeah, there were supernatural things that were going on. And I started pulling some of the things that were just kind of life principles. And I realized that there were four main things that were there, and it was vision, passion, discipline, and risk. And I heard that from a friend of mine, the late Jack Ryle. He was a great preacher, great teacher. And I heard this concept from him, and I said, I'm stealing it from you because it's so good. But, vision is that being able to see beyond your boundaries. You don't know what's happening over the horizon, but you got to be able to see beyond what your limitations are. And once you see it, it leads to passion, because passion gets you inspired by what you've seen, gets you up in the morning. But you got to have discipline. That's the hard part. That's shaping your life, shaping your life to accomplish that vision. And then you got to have risk. Risk is spending your life, the rest of your life, to accomplish the vision. And I always say it's got to happen in that order, because risk without discipline is recklessness, and discipline without passion is legalism, and passion without vision is hype, and vision without faith is meaningless. So you got to have faith in yourself, faith in God, faith in your community, the people around you, faith in your family. But you got to have that, and then let that vision come out of who you are, which is another thing. Who you are is something we've lost in this culture. Everybody that's confused with their gender and their pronouns, and they're making up words these days to try to describe how and who they are. And you need a glossary of terms just to know how to address somebody. That's identity issues, right? It's an identity issue. So you got to know who you are. And the only way you can know who you are is you got to know where you came from. So that's history leads to identity. Identity leads to destiny. That's where you're going in life. And if you do those three things and own those three things, you'll leave a legacy. That's what you leave behind. So history, identity, destiny, legacy. And so that's been my lifelong pursuit. Make sure that I'm operating according to who I am and according to that vision. And so those things kind of govern my life. I'm a very passionate person. I can get pissed off at everybody, right? And I can get pretty fired up. People know that. And my mother thinks that I keep getting in Facebook jail because I cuss. That's not it at all. But I also know when I get outside of myself, right? That's where stress and anxiety comes from. I've got a tattoo right here on my arm. It's a guitar with wings.
Oh, Check.
With me?
I think there you go. I got you. You're
Yeah,
good.
sorry. I
You're
had a
good.
call that came in. No,
Yeah.
there's a tattoo on the arm right there that says rhythm of life. You know, when you get in rhythm with your life, not anybody else's life, you get in rhythm with your life, it's going to be successful. And I think when you get in rhythm with truth, not your truth, my truth, I don't believe in all that stuff. You can have your story, but it's not your truth. There is the truth, and that's it. And so you get in rhythm with that, and life is successful, and you will change things. You will, by the very nature of your existence, change the world you live in. Walt Mason, he's got a great poem that was written 100 years ago. He said, there's a man in this world who there's a man in this world who's never turned down where every chance is to stray. He gets a glad hand in populous town and out where farmers make hay. Greeted with pleasure in deserts of sand and deep in the aisle of the woods, wherever he goes, there's a welcoming hand. He's the man who delivers the goods. And I always say, I want to be the man who delivers the goods. I want to bring something of substance every time I show up. And I believe that comes from having vision, passion, discipline, and risk. Spend your life to accomplish that vision.
I like that. Appreciate it. So when we started, I mean, this is Truth Will Set You Free, but it started out as hashtag Be the Change. And it really, what I based it off of was the shooting in Dallas, Texas in 2016, the police shooting. I go, how weird of a country / world do we live in right now where a bunch of people are protecting those protesting against them for whatever reason it is. And those are the ones that ended up getting shot and killed. And it's like, we have such an opportunity in this country. And I do believe there is still a purpose for protests, but protests are to create awareness. But when there's an opportunity for action, take action in your own life, take action in the lives of the people around you, and feel the flow of what you are meant to do. And that will immediately create the change, like you said, not just in your own life, but the world around you. Because if you can't change yourself and can't get yourself ready, you're not going to be able to actually create that change and that ripple effect to the world around you. So couldn't agree more. I'm about to feed the trolls because Kaecey just said, don't feed the trolls. Because I have a question. I know that you have trolls. We've got one troll in this comment box, which is, pretty good. And sometimes we quiet them. But what do you do about trolls? Your opinion on trolls? And this guy's been going off, and I don't want to give him too much attention, but I think this is an interesting. This is this comment to me makes me laugh. Hyperbole mixed with hollow bravado is the first sign of appeals to ignorance, which I find is funny. Hollow bravado to a guy that's deciding to actually run for governor to create change. Take that away. Let's just talk about how do you deal with trolls in this troll world that we kind of live in these days. Social media.
Don't feed the trolls. But the troll behavior is, I've said recently that Justin Trudeau is what it looks like when you give an internet troll power. When you give a weak person power. The thing about trolling is you want attention. You want somebody to acknowledge you. So it's a narcissistic behavior. It's also Machiavellian. And you want someone to bolster you up. I don't engage in trolling because I only have so many moments on this earth to live. And I don't want to waste my time with that, right? You live your life, I'll live mine. I used to have a license plate that said, I be I, you be you, okay? And I think that's a good philosophy. Be yourself and don't worry about it. I've got a video that I did years ago where I talked about going into a gas station and getting a breakfast biscuit, and you ate it. You knew it was going to be nasty. You knew you weren't going to like it, but you ate it anyway. You chose to participate in the consumption of this nasty biscuit, this greasy bread with a squirrel in between it. And you know what's funny is you're like, this is disgusting. It's probably going to make me shit later, and it's going to make me sick. But it feels good in the moment, but it reminds me that I'm a disgusting human being because I've got a nasty biscuit habit, because tomorrow I'll come back and I'll buy the same damn nasty biscuit again. So stop eating the nasty biscuit. Stop consuming stuff that's really not good for your life. And that's mentally and emotionally and spiritually and psychologically. And people say, oh, this was a publicity stunt. I promise you, you do not want the publicity that comes from doing what I've done for the last 18 months. I've had to lay aside businesses. I've had to relinquish sources of income. I've made far less money in the last year than I have in previous years. I've lost relationships. I've put 52,000 miles. No, I'm sorry. Let me look. 55,900 miles on this truck in the last year. That's on this truck. There's no private jets. There's no tour buses. I got access to a lot of different means of transportation, but I said, nope, we're going to take this truck, and where I go, I'm going to drive across this state. It's a big state. So I put in the hours, I put in the hard time, and put in the work, and here we are. If you want to troll me, God bless you, but you're not pulling me down off this stool.
I love it. All right. Well, do you mind if we have you for 5 more minutes? Can I keep you a little bit longer?
I'm with you guys. I'm whatever y'all want to do. I'm not going to tell you what's in my solo cup.
All right. So obviously we got a lot going on with Ukraine. I actually was on Fox Radio this last week. It was my first time doing some national radio regional radio. And it's funny because you want to talk about vaccines? You want to talk about local politics? You want to go all through I got you. The first week that I get to go on, it's Ukraine and Russia, which is obviously geopolitics, which is something I had to spend a couple hours on, and I did a bunch of radio spots in the morning. And it was fun to learn about. I was skiing today, and I'm on a snowboard trip, and it's amazing the way that this situation is deteriorating minute by minute. Like it's absolutely absurd what's happening and how it affects the country. The big thing I talked about is we have destroyed our infrastructure to a point right now where these sanctions put on are so dangerous because in the end, it's just going to hurt our pocketbooks. And if the sanctions get too high, China's going to get involved, and it's a whole bunch of issues. So right now, based on what you're seeing in the Ukraine, because it does affect Texans, it affects everybody. What is your opinion on the situation? Russia is definitely fully moving forward with their invasion at this point.
Well, this is what happens when people are offended by mean tweets and they want to put the quote nice guy that they perceive as nice into the office when he's completely incompetent. And again, let's set aside the Democrat versus Republican, Trump versus Biden. Let's set all that aside for a second. Anybody with a clear mind, anybody that's thinking about this knows that this administration is incompetent. They have no clue. Joe Biden has always been stupid. 50 years in Washington, D.C. Go back and look at his Clarence Thomas hearings. He's always been dumb. The problem is he just never lacked in confidence. Like he just boldly charges in and he'll stomp into hell with a water pistol, but he's not a smart guy. We know Kamala Harris and what she said the other day and wherever it was in Poland or Germany, wherever she was. I mean, that was a word salad that had nothing to do with anything. I mean, it's just nonsense. And she contradicted herself numerous times. So I don't know what we're looking at other than we're going to see, we have economically gone towards a modern monetary theory, which loves deficit. It loves debt because now you can just keep printing money and the backing of the dollar and the currency value can just go away. They've also embraced things like ESG scores, which are determining not your FICO score or your credit score, but now they want to tell you what you can buy and what you can purchase and do business with based on your browser history and things you've posted on the internet. So this is a parallel clown world we're living in. It's a house of mirrors. So I don't know, what is Putin's agenda? We don't know fully at this point in time. What is the relationship going to be between him and Zelensky? We don't know. We know that these are human beings on the ground. What the motivations are ultimately don't matter because this is on Putin. This is not on Biden. This is on Putin. Now, what's been done leads up to this, and the American people are going to suffer. We're going to suffer in terms of our first world comforts. Gas is going to go through the roof. The fact that we're relying on foreign oil and we haven't unleashed our own energy resources here in America that Biden shut down, it's going to be problematic. We've already seen the supply chain issues. That's only going to get worse. If China, which by all intents and purposes looks like they're headed towards Taiwan right now, if they do that, this all stems back to this atrocious pullout in Afghanistan that happened last August. And the world was watching while everybody was trying to figure out their genders and trying to figure out, their little social media posts with Jen Psaki and they were putting transgender people, making them admirals and giving them a position in the cabinet and all this kind of stuff. The world's watching. And while we've gotten progressively woke, the rest of the world still looks back and says, nah.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. We're looking at, we just hired somebody that has, that calls Fauci daddy, apparently brilliant. Apparently he's brilliant, but there's certain things that when they're on your social media and you have a certain belief system, maybe you're not a right fit to be a leader in this country on certain jobs. Just throwing that out there. And again, other countries, China changed their national song or their anthem 4 years ago to essentially talk about taking over the world. It was pretty scary if you actually listen to the words of the new Chinese or CCP anthem or whatever, like we have our national anthem. And then you look at what Russia's doing. We don't really know. But ultimately, does it fall on Biden? Yes and no, because ultimately we are the peacekeepers of the world, no matter if we want the job or not. That's just who we have been for however long. And our sign of perceived weakness has become a really big issue at this point. And because he's talking about ramping up all these things back home that he essentially shut down, we have to ramp these up at a record pace right now in order to survive. I would not be surprised in Texas if we're not seeing $4 gas prices by the end of next month. Oh, I think you might be muted, Chad. Or it might be the same thing with that call coming in. Check. Go ahead and go back really quick. Go in and out, and then we'll wrap up the show. I'll have Kaecey come back up. Sorry about that, Chad. Oops, sorry, Kaecey. You do it. You got it.
We cancel each other out like we planned to not do, and we still did.
Right. So we'll have Chad come back on. We'll wrap up the show. I kind of want to ask him one more question about the convoy. We'll leave each other on, see what he thinks of the convoy, and we'll go ahead and wrap up. Check 1, check 2.
How about now?
You got it. Can you hear me now?
And to your point, I heard what you're saying, Anthony. To your point, I encourage people, get some food supplies. Keep enough cash on hand to for a week, right? Do some things to prepare. Take care of yourself. Learn how to grow some food if you don't know how. Get a generator. Get a little fuel to make sure your vehicles have fuel in them, because it could get very dicey. We already saw that. They can shut our world down real quick. We saw that in 2020. You never know what's going to happen, and at some point in time, we may have to become very self-sufficient in the direction that we go and stop being so governmentally dependent on their systems. The government was never designed for you to be dependent upon it, and we're starting to see that that's a nightmare reality.
Yeah, and I'm going to rephrase my statement because our troll did bring up a point. I said the U.S. is the world's police officer. I'm saying I don't think we should be, but we have to look at some of the agreements that we have made, and I think that was a big issue in Afghanistan. We had an agreement with those people, and we broke it. Once we break it once, we could break it twice. Once we break it twice, we might as well break it 3 times. And at that point, who is going to make an agreement with the United States of America? It's an empty promise.
Well, and I'll say this and hush, to the point about, look at Texas, right? If you look at America and it was a puzzle, right? You set it up and all the states are a piece of the puzzle. You pull Texas out, the whole thing crumbles, right? Just based on where it sits on the map. Well, it's sort of true with America too. You pull America out of geopolitics and you got a problem, because there are some legitimate barbarians out there who are still living with a mindset that's 500 years old, and it's about world domination. They want that. And so we are a peacekeeper in that regard, but I don't believe in Woodrow Wilson's plan of us being world police and getting involved in every foreign affair. I don't believe that. But there's something to be said for our economic power and our geopolitical power to be able to keep some of those crazies at bay.
Which I feel like we don't have anymore, in my opinion, personally.
No, we don't.
I forgot we had one note. I wanted to make sure we covered it. The common sense and humor philosophy.
Yeah. I've always said that if you take common sense, anything really, if it's a point you're trying to get across, but if it's common sense, and common sense seems to be dead, if you could take it, wrap it in a little bit of humor, and it makes it an easier pill to swallow, right? So even my approach towards comedy over the years has kind of been a George Carlin type approach, and that is, hey, it's sort of your pulpit, right? You get up, that's the place for free speech. Let's get up here and let's talk about it. And you laugh, but you walk away going, he made a pretty good point. I might not have agreed with everything he said, but he made a pretty good point. And I want us to do that. But at the end of the day, just be comfortable in your own skin. I mean, be comfortable, be who you are. That's why we can have these internet glitches right here and come back and keep on with the conversation. And we haven't lost anything, right?
Right.
The show didn't end. We still had fun with it. Just be yourself. Be comfortable in whatever. And I had a friend of mine. We were in the Philippines years ago. One of my mentors, he was 72 years old at the time. He's dead now. And we were riding in the back of a pickup truck up into these mountains 4 hours. And he's 72 years old. He's bouncing around. And we kept looking at him and we said, "Are you okay?" And he goes, "It's just another way to spend a day." I love that attitude. And that is my motto in life. It's just another way to spend a day.
Well, I'll let you wrap up. Kaecey, you got anything else for Chad?
No, sir. No,
Well,
sir.
before you go, Chad, before you give your final words, I think one of the biggest things, and you know, I as I said, I got to meet you and I on West, and one of the things you said in the very beginning or very end of your speaking is we think that we don't know what poll you talked about today. We don't know what polling is. We don't know what it's an accurate poll in the state of Texas. So
Right.
ultimately, don't be afraid of quote unquote wasting a vote because you have no idea which way it goes. And ultimately, right now, as we know, it's going to be very tough,
Yeah.
statistically very difficult to beat an incumbent in the state of Texas. But a vote for Chad or a vote for Alan is not, it's actually not even necessarily a vote for Chad or a vote for Alan or a vote for Don Huffines. It's
Right.
actually a vote to make sure that we are getting somebody to that next level for the runoffs. And Chad, I resonate with your message, and I really enjoyed Alan West. But you and I mean, we both come from comedic backgrounds. We come from kind of politically incorrect philosophies. That's why I'm going to be voting for you in the primary, and I hope to see. And again, no matter if it's you or Alan, those are the two people I've been following the most. A vote for you is not a vote against Alan West. A vote for you is a vote
That's correct.
against the incumbent,
That's
Mr.
correct.
Abbott.
I appreciate you saying that. I'm humbled by that, and I'm working hard to make sure that not only I continue to earn that support, but make sure that you value it in the days ahead. We've got a lot of support. It's a really good thing, and a lot of people don't understand how primaries in Texas and primaries work different in different states. But in Texas, it doesn't split the vote. It just tries to get the incumbent below 50%, so it forces them into a runoff. And people say, well, look, if I don't get but 4% of the vote, that's 4% that the incumbent didn't get, and it helps the overall cause. I think we're going to do far better than that. I think that what I'm getting, the feedback I'm getting, it's amazing what's happening on a grassroots level. And if nothing else, I've been able to show people that a voice that's passionate with a vision can go out there and really change the world.
I love it. Well, Chad, that's a great way to end. Kaecey and I are going to wrap it up. If you wait backstage for 2 minutes, we'll say hi and we'll thank you. And I would love to do this again. Either as you are running in the runoff or after that, I'm going to be working more probably with Jeff Crilly. I believe as though you've been to his studios before.
I love Jeff's an old
Yeah.
friend. Absolutely. Great guy.
So I might be using that studio and might be doing a podcast, kind of a Joe Rogan style there. So maybe we'll get you in on once
You
the
gotta come into
schedule
my
comes.
show as well. If you're that close, you got to be coming on my show there in Irving. So come on.
Done and done. We'll set that up. I appreciate it, Chad. And either I'll see you after this or we'll talk later. All right.
Perfect. Appreciate you guys. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Kaecey, what do you think?
Freaking amazing. I wouldn't expect anything out less. Like, Chad is exactly who he is. And that's where one of the things that I told you as soon as he announced, he needs to be the governor of Texas. And that's where I am a huge fan. And I've been since day one as soon as he announced he's running. And I wouldn't expect anything different from him. He's an awesome personality. He was upfront, honest. He's not your traditional politician. He's exactly what people need to vote for and have running in their areas to change their communities.
100% agreed. So again, guys, thank you for joining on this show. Please share it out. I know this is earlier than usual. I got to come down off the mountain and get this interview in. Probably worked out well because my shoulder is currently throbbing as I separated it yesterday. But if you like any of the gear that you see on the show, Kaecey is wearing the Keep On Truckin' for Freedom shirt right there. You can get that. What you have? I know you set something up on the website today. Oh, yeah, because it turns out CPAC is now Awake Not Woke is their theme. So we've got that. Let's see if we can help partner with them to sell some merchandise. What do you say?
Yep, CPAC 2022. Well, CPAC 22 will give you 22% off of everything in the store starting today. And so you'll see some of that stuff coming up. I've got some screenshots and stuff I've been watching from CPAC today. And yeah, it's all over. And they did a little segment on Awake Not Woke stuff earlier that I missed because of a meeting, but I'm going to clip that out and show it out.
Love it. So awakenotwokestore.com. And again, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I think he's a really genuine guy. To the troll, to GH. Okay. So just to make the statement, I didn't misunderstand you. I think you mistyped the fact that he had false bravado. I can see the issue you have a secession, but I'm a Texan. I'm not opposed to it. Just throwing that out there. Anyways, take it easy, guys. I'll come back on in a little bit, give a little rant, give a little rave, talk about my thoughts. Kaecey's going to be sharing some stuff from CPAC, and nothing like the cheap commercialization of marijuana. Trump was the cheapest. God, people just hate Trump. People just hate that. They're talking about how he's calling Putin smart right now, and they're talking about how dangerous that is to the world. Putin is smart. I don't like him. I think he's a horrible person. So does Trump. But you could call a spade a spade. Putin is being much smarter than our current president right now.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is people are freaking ridiculous. Go back and look it up. Hitler is probably one of the most intelligent leaders that we've had. He had this ability to lead people and manipulate people.
Yeah.
And that takes intelligence, whether you want to believe it or not.
Yeah. You know what? By voting for Chad Prather, that would actually be, actually moving towards seceding. So there you go. Let's see. I love the occasional troll. Oozing knowledge how much they would hate it if it were. Oh, I would not hate it. If Texas seceded, I would be ecstatic because all of the left would move out of the state, and then we could enjoy having normal people around us that use common sense and agree on like 90% of the things. It would be the most beautiful thing in the world if we were to secede.
You would have many other states join them, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, there's like 9 that have that in their constitution. Is it 9 or 10 that have the ability to do that?
We want to say 9. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, God bless, guys. Check out some of the merch on the website, wakenotwokestore.com. And thanks to Chad for being on the show. Looking forward to possibly having him on again. So,
yes.
Take it easy. I'm nowhere near the button. Where's the button?
Oh, jeez.
There it is. Seriously, you're going to be nice at the end of the show? It really much appreciated, GH. I'm glad you stuck around for the whole interview. Not opposed to having a few people have dissenting opinions.